What's the story there?
Yeah. So, I met this guy online, right? And, we met up, we had a date and whatnot, and it went good. So, every weekend he would come over. It was like a 2-hour drive, so he would come over, pick me up, and like we would go on dates, I guess, like cute dates or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was very delusional after the second date, and I started to get like really attached by like what he would say and do. And so just weeks kept passing by, 2 months, and I started to notice like little things that he would do, but like I said, I was like just kind of love bomb and kind of didn't say anything, like little red flags that he would do. And so it didn't end up good.
Oh my God, that was the vaguest story ever. Okay. I will.
Was he a diagnosed narcissist, or did you diagnose him as a narcissist?
I guess I did, just because like I don't know, he would
gaslight you?
No. It's already difficult enough getting an answer out of her. Just don't interrupt. Let her answer, please.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so he would like do I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so we're just looking for what is the narcissistic type of behavior that you would see that led you to diagnose him as a narcissist?
Like, let's say I was going to the gym and like he would like, I would wear something and he'd be like, oh, like that's, it's like a crop top, like, oh, don't wear that. Or like saying like, oh, post this or else like you don't love me, like type, I don't, yeah. He did, like,
verbatim said that?
Like, oh, like not love me, but like say like, oh, like why aren't you like posting this, like, like
Whoa,
I took a picture.
This is, Andrew, I'll let you continue in just a sec here. But did everybody at the table and did the chat notice what she just did? So you said he said something.
Yes.
And then when I pressed you, you said he actually didn't say that.
Wait.
He said something completely different.
Wait, I'm getting confused.
You said, if you don't post this, you don't love me.
Like not love me, but like oh, like no affection towards me. Like you're not showing any affection, like, in that way.
But there's a big difference between, at least I think, between a man saying, if you don't do this, it's proof that you don't love me, and a man saying, if you don't do this, this is perhaps an example of you not caring. I think that's a big difference.
I think
we need to be very precise in our language here, because I don't think it's fair to if you're explaining a situation about how somebody has allegedly wronged you, to lie about what they said. But go on, continue.
Yeah.
Okay, so Andrew was asking what he did that was narcissistic.
I'm sorry, I'm pretty bad at this.
¡Afuera!
Wait, was that? I think that's just going to be, I don't know why I think that's a quit. That's going to be a quit. She went into the bathroom, but that's going to be a quit. So, Andrew, I know you have strong opinions on the whole narcissism thing.
Yeah, well...
Peace out. You too, homie.
It's just been something that I've experienced quite often, that when a woman calls a man a narcissist and I ask if the man has actually been diagnosed as a narcissist, the answer universally is no, that they have not, which means that there's a lot of women who are either dating the same like 12 guys who are narcissists or whatever, or they really overdiagnose how many men are narcissists. And I've never been able to quite figure out why it is that that so many women in the first place think that they could make such a diagnosis to begin with. So, yeah. What's going on? What's going on?
Huh?
What's going on?
Huh? Done? Donezo? Oh, okay. All right, that's a... Okay, all right, that's fine. Morgan, welcome to the panel. Andrew, sorry for the interruption. We were still figuring out
I was just saying, that a lot of women seem to diagnose men with narcissism, even though they have zero credentials to do so. They have absolutely no real ability to do so. They don't have the required training to do so, and yet they're very quick to do that, and it's very damaging to a person's reputation to say that they're narcissistic. You're essentially hitting them with an order which is on par with borderline personality disorder and others like this. And I just wonder why women think it's like, for instance, I guess I should ask this first, but has anybody at the table ever dated a narcissist? Yeah, now suddenly not, right?
I think I have. I think I have.
You think you have?
I think I have, yeah. But like you said, like you can never officially tell, right? And I mean, I think women or people do over-diagnose, but also narcissistic people kind of never get really diagnosed because they don't know that they are or don't think that they are, and they would never go to therapy to be diagnosed. So I think those are two kind of reasons. But yeah, you're right. I think you can never be sure.
I mean,
you know,
possibly. The big problem that I have, though, is that many of the traits which are considered narcissistic by women in modernity are often conflated with things which are just confidence, assertiveness, not putting up with things that they don't like, or having standards that they want adhered to. Those things are also desirable traits. And yet, oftentimes, even though those are the traits which attract women to that man in the first place, later, after the relationship has been resolved, they say that, oh, I should have known those were narcissistic traits, which is, that's I guess, the bizarre part to me. It's like, the guy you said, for instance, Rachel, you said, I dated a narcissist. When you think about those narcissistic traits that you now look back on and say, these were signs of narcissism, weren't those similar traits to what attracted you to the guy in the first place?
No, because it doesn't show at first. It just starts showing up kind of in a sneaky way, and then it's like there's more and more gaslighting, and there's more and more like criticism, and then it just becomes more and more as you go along the relationship. And at some point, you kind of like you start doubting yourself so much about kind of everything, and you erase yourself. But at the beginning, you don't. It doesn't show as confidence or anything like that. It's.
Well, what does it show as?
At the beginning, it doesn't show at all.
Yeah, but what was this guy's narcissistic trait?
Just like constant criticism. You feel like you have to walk on eggshells. Like everything you're going to do is going to be wrong. Everything you're going to say is going to be wrong. He's going to kind of freak out about every little thing that you say.
Those could apply to a narcissist, but they could also apply to someone who's not a
controlling. Like he needs to control the situation. It needs to be like he wants, and like let's say there's a double standard as well. Like he makes a joke, and if you make that joke, then it doesn't,
all of those things, which I agree probably aren't desirable characteristics, can still be held by people who are not narcissists.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said you can never really know.
Well, I think you can know. I think that you know by having a diagnosis by medical professionals who work with these people for many years before they make such a diagnosis. But even then, I guess maybe an olive branch here, maybe you can't ever know, because even diagnoses between psychological professionals tend to differ when it comes to individuals because of how complex it is. So one psychologist may say, yes, that's a narcissist, and another one says, no, it's not a narcissist. It's because we're talking about human behavior, the scientific method often goes out the window, right?
Yeah, and narcissism apparently is the hardest thing to diagnose. And narcissist people are very, very smart and very manipulative. So apparently, that's they can fuck up with the actual psychologist or a psychiatrist.
I'm not even sure it exists. I'm not convinced that the actual condition of narcissism exists any more than psychopathy exists. I mean, psychopathy is completely made up. It's not in any psychological handbooks, not in any of the DSMs. It's just never, we made it up, right? We made the entire, people call each other psychopaths all the time. It's not even a diagnosable condition. It's like, we just made it up.
I guess
and
it's
yet
just
people like, how many of you didn't know that? How many of you didn't know that we made up psychopathy? We made up psychopath. That's a totally made up diagnosis. How many of you knew that?
I didn't.
Yeah. It's completely fabricated. I think it's fun to call people that, right? I guess. Oh, that guy's a real psycho. But that's not what they call. They call it, it's a personality disorder. They have different names. You might refer to that as some form of psychopathy, but there's no actual diagnosis for psychopathy. So yeah, it's hard for me to believe some of these kind of widely used diagnoses like narcissism. I'm not even sure if they really exist.
Wait, so none of y'all have dated a narcissist, really? None of you? Come on.
I just said I think I did.
I think my dad is one.
Your dad's one?
I think so.
Okay.
Nope.
I don't think so.
No narcissist? Yes?
That has narcissistic tendencies, yes.
Okay.
But there's a difference if you have tendencies or you're, like you guys said, are actually
Tendencies.
diagnosed with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the bothersome thing, right? It's like narcissistic tendencies means what?
So I do feel, I did some research on narcissism. There's two types of narcissism. There's covert and overt.
No,
And-
covert narcissism, and there's actually 6 different kinds.
Okay.
But covert narcissism is under the umbrella, and it's widely disputed by psychologists if covert narcissism even exists, or grandiose narcissism, if that even exists, right? So that would these are umbrella terms, but again, it's very difficult to get to specificity when you start to dive into it. You start to find out, well, it's a lot more vague than you think.
I think it's important to do research on these, diagnoses, and before you choose to self-diagnose or diagnose someone else without a medical professional. But it can help you be aware of what's going on with that person and why they have these tendencies. Like, for example, I feel that narcissists lack empathy. So it's the difference between the overt and covert that I was mentioning is overt is the grandiose narcissism. It's very outward projection, whereas covert it's harder to really spot because they don't really need the praise from society. It's more, sneaky is just like an easier way to put it. And I do feel that overt narcissism is like the embodying of grandiose behaviors and thinking that they are better than others because they have that lack of empathy, but they also can be very charming because they put on some sort of facade.
Yeah, let me try to give you maybe a different take here. Well, I was in a shop one time, and I was welding something up, and I looked up, and a guy had put a drill bit through his hand, and he was screaming, and it was bleeding everywhere. And all of us stopped what we were doing and started laughing. Of course, we went over and we were helping him while he was screaming, but we were laughing hysterically while this was happening. Does that show a distinct lack of empathy? Right? I think it does, but I think that when you're talking about masculinity and you're talking about how men behave, we're not supposed to be overly empathetic. We're not supposed to be that way. That's not what we're designed to do. We're literally designed to go out and kill large animals, right, and feel nothing. We're not supposed to care about Fluffy. We're not supposed to care how Fluffy looks. We're supposed to care how Fluffy tastes. And so what happens, I think, is this kind of great conflation where because women are very empathetic to each other, they think that men, in turn, are also supposed to be very empathetic. Men are not empathetic. We're not empaths. We're not supposed to be empaths. That would be very bad if we were empathetic, in fact. That would be the opposite of good. We wouldn't have been able to hunt very well, for instance, right?
I don't believe that narcissism is directly associated with gender or masculinity or femininity.
True.
I don't think that laughing at the matter at hand it's like the direct example of a lack of empathy as what I was relating to with narcissism. It feels very fake when they do the display of empathy because they have that lack of depth when it does come to their empathy, and they will make it more obvious.
Many men have trouble conveying, for instance, and women too, right? So this argument would be used right back against you. Many people just have trouble conveying empathy. It doesn't even mean that they're not empathetic. They just have trouble with it. Or they're not particularly wired to be empathetic. Men especially are not wired to be empathetic. We're not supposed to be empathetic. We're supposed to have barriers and guards from empathy for a reason. Men who are designed from the biological perspective to protect the tribe, they're going to have to kill other men, right? That's what they're wired to do, to kill other men. If they're wired to do that, how much empathy should they be bogged down with? Probably not much, right? Probably not much.
There's a difference between outwardly showing that you lack empathy and kind of embracing that quality about yourself versus lacking that empathy and making it as if that you have this empathy. And that's why I said that narcissists tend to be more charming people, because they fake that kind of empathy.
Yeah, but think about what you're saying. Imagine that you're in school, you're a young man, right? And schools are mostly overwhelmingly run by women, and most of the policies are implemented by women. You tend to see young women do really well in school and young men not do well in school. Men are penalized for things which we consider to be just fine. For instance, if a man gets up in the middle of class and drags another guy outside and beats him up, we don't really care about that. We don't consider that to be a big deal. And we never did. Even in the United States, the idea of like you punch somebody in school and you went to jail or you got suspended or expelled, that's a new thing, right? That's a new thing. So when you're talking about like rough and tumble play, things like this, imagine being in an environment where you're told that you need to be empathetic all the time. You're following a different set of rules which are designed not for your sex or how you're designed. It would be very easy for you to fall into the pattern of faking things like empathy in order to keep the people around you happy, even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with you having far less of it or not expressing it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when you were in school, when you guys aren't that removed from high school, who was more likely to get into fistfights, the boys or the girls?
Boys.
The boys, right? And how often were they able to become friends?
Hey, we got it.
After they got in the fist fight, how often were they able to become friends afterwards?
Guys do make up easier. That is true. Usually when girls are offended by each other, there's usually like a lot of toxic emotional behavior thereafter. So I do agree with that.
Yeah. So what happens is that men kick the shit out of each other all the time, and we just don't see a big deal with it. And we're not very empathetic about it, and we usually laugh hysterically at the guy who's on the ground and then pick his ass up and brush him off. Like, that's how we do things. Women, they don't do things that way. They're looking for empathy, things like this. But I don't really see why men need to necessarily live in a woman's world where we have to kind of pretend that empathy is this kind of primary edict, because for us, it's just really not.
Wait, Andrews, originally, do you think that women are more empathetic than men?
Well, I think that they display empathy much more than men. I think that the way that this is expressed is far different, right? I think that men can suppress their emotions far better than women can, and they're very good at doing it, and they have the chemicals in their body that make them good at doing it. And women oftentimes, even if their chemical makeup is perfect for controlling emotions, one time a month even, the chemical differential will kind of kick in, and you can see all sorts of hysterical behavior, this type of thing, just based on that alone. So, yeah, I do think that men are empathetic, but I think that they display it far differently. And what I would consider empathy and what a woman would consider empathy are two very different things.
Well, excluding the outward displays of empathy, assuming there is no display of empathy, either from a man or a woman, do you think women have a greater capacity to
No, I think that it's just not countered. It's not countered. So I would say that the amount of empathy from any normal man or normal woman would be the same. But I would say that the counter that men have when they're applying things to it, different chemicals in their body to it, and then stoicism and perhaps reason, things like this, which they're rewarded for in society and always have been, they apply those traits to empathy. And I don't think that those types of barriers exist that way for women, and instead different types of barriers for different emotions exist for them. So I'm not saying that men and women aren't just as empathetic. I'm saying that you're going to think of it like a barrier that you have to walk through, one barrier, then the next barrier, then the next barrier. If all a person ever was empathetic, that would be terrible, right? And so these kind of displays are differentiated by what it is that men value versus women. And I think that we value reason, and we are rewarded for reason, and we're rewarded for keeping emotions under control, and women not so much. They don't really see rewards that same way. And so I think that there's kind of counters in how empathy is displayed.
But don't you think there should be a healthy balance between logic and empathy, and emotional reasoning and logical reasoning?
What if it's logical for me not to be empathetic? Which one should win?
I mean, as someone, I am not.
Yeah, but hang on. Let me ask you the question again. What if the most logical thing I can do in a situation is not be empathetic?
Then
But if I were empathetic, it would make the person feel better. Which thing should I do?
I think, from my personal perspective, logical thing is always better. But I know that some people value emotions more. But
yeah, I know. But what you just did was you just gave me a value judgment, and your value judgment is we should value logic over empathy. So if that is the case, if a man does exactly that, I don't see why he'd be punished for it, or how that would be a bad balance, because we're valuing that now higher than empathy, right?
Yes, but I feel like the men that you're mentioning a lot of the times are the men who doesn't have any empathy or lack complete, like, any emotional capacity to understand the
Those
other person.
men, people completely lack those traits, are extraordinarily rare. I mean, extraordinarily rare. Yes, I'm sure that we've all encountered them. I think most of us who have encountered them probably didn't even know that we encountered them, but they're very rare. And I think that the reason so many people misdiagnose this, who aren't even in the field of psychology, is because they see things as being a lack of empathy, or see things as being a lack of emotion, because they would behave differently, or they're used to people behaving differently. But that doesn't mean that the person actually lacks empathy, right?
No, of course not. I just think that both genders, or people, because it doesn't always apply to gender. I'm more of a logical person, whereas my friend sometimes is more empathetic. I think we both need to work on each other and learn from each other how to improve both sides. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I'm going to kind of reject the balance thing, right? I don't think that you need to be balanced. I think that there's kind of a hierarchical order of how things should be done. And do I think that you should defer to kind of reason and logic before emotion? I do. And I don't think that needs to be balanced. Why does that need to be balanced exactly? That to me seems foolish.
That doesn't mean like it has to be 50% balance. That just means try to understand the other person too. If yeah,
but that's logical, right? You're asking for logic here. If you say would you try to understand the other person's perspective, I mean that's exactly what we're doing the second we're arguing, or the second we're crafting arguments, or the second we're doing any of that. We're literally trying to understand the other person's perspective. The entire course of discourse is to do this, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I do see what you mean. And like I said, I'm someone who values logic more. However, if you're trying to be logical about a situation, sometimes you're becoming too robotic. And I think it's healthy to include emotions in whatever decision
Well,
you
who
make.
gets to determine these standards? Like, who gets to determine the standard of what's too robotic and what's empathetic enough, other than how I feel? So, I mean, again, it's always just a deference to, but I feel this way. And it's like, well, if the other person doesn't feel that way, and they're not doing anything wrong exactly, then we're just really kind of putting it down to preferences, right?
Correct. Yeah, it varies from a person to person, but I do think that there's some people from both sides who are too close-minded to see the other way. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think closed-mindedness is good too. Like, for instance, I would be very closed-minded to an open relationship, right? I would be very closed-minded to, I mean, just any number of different things I would be extremely closed-minded to. And I don't really see a problem with that either. I mean, I don't see why that's problematic.
I mean, there are specific things that we're all close-minded about, but
Yeah, sure.
But what I mean,
agree.
being open-minded about that, okay, this person functions differently. This person thinks with their emotions first and then thinks through the actions. Whereas, like me, for example,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
about
sure. But here's the difference, right? Here's the difference. You and I value that differently. And that's where this kind of empathy thing comes up, right? Is because I don't value everybody else's decisions equally. I think a lot of people make stupid decisions that I don't value. I think that they have bullshit lifestyles that I don't value. And so I just say, okay, this is valueless to me. I don't care about it. I don't even want to understand it, right? It's completely valueless. And I don't see a problem with that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's why you wouldn't work with every single person, whether that would be as a friend or a relationship. It all
Sure.
varies from a person to person. And definitely, I mean, I'm sure we all have opinions about, oh yeah, this person is doing something weird and I don't want to interact with that. But I'm saying if we're talking about relationships and you're already pursuing this person, and if you guys are already close, you should make like amends to try to work on each other together and understand each other better. Because I think the healthy relationship, it's always should be a balance of emotions and logic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but then the thing is I think that all relationships are going to have dominance involved. One person's always going to be dominant over the other person, no matter what type of relationship you ever engage in. I think any two consciousnesses which come together, one is going to dominate the other one, no matter what.
Right.
And so the thing is like, when you say to find this balance, right, I say that you should find the deference. Who's going to be deferred to and who's not going to be deferred to when it comes to the larger decisions. And that's where the Christian ethic comes in of submission from my worldview.
So if there's dominance in a connection, there must be the opposing quality or energy, which is giving that balance in this kind of...
Why must there?
Sorry?
Why must there?
In order for someone to be more dominant in a connection, there must be someone more submissive.
Why must there?
What must there?
Yeah, I don't understand the premise here. So in order for someone to be more dominant, one person has to be more submissive. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right, go ahead.
So this kind of reminds me of the golden mean. This is a philosophical, I can't never pronounce that, maybe by Aristotle, but it's all about there can never be too much excess or deficiency. So I do believe everything must be balanced in order to work. And in this case, if we're talking about emotion and logic, in order to be an impartial person, you do have to understand all sides, and not just through logic, but with your emotions as well, in order to get to a sound decision.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I still don't really understand where you're going with it. Like, even if I were to assume that you needed to have emotions and logic, I think I would agree with that. But I'm not really sure what the point here is when we're talking about two consciousnesses, which one would always need to defer to the other. Like, that's always going to be the case, right?
It's just I think that
I'm just trying to figure out the position. That's all. I'm not beating you up. I just want to figure out the position. Like, what is it you're actually trying to say here?
Well, just because you did mention that you don't find it important to have balance, I was just providing an example of why I do believe balance is important in all areas of your life.
Well, balance to me would assume, like if I was trying to balance this pen, that it was equal on all sides, or otherwise it would fall over. But as was just demonstrated by the gal next to you, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name because you came in a little late, but she said, well, when we're talking about balance, what if you had the pin still balanced, but it was like this, right? What if it was over on its side like this? It's still balanced, right? It's just all moving one direction. But when you say balance, I'm not sure that I'm looking for equality or equality between logic and emotion. We just want balance here, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, if that's the case, then I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm just saying that I think that the deference to logic and reason is usually going to be superior than the deference to emotion. And that men are, generally speaking, more reasonable and more logical. And so, generally speaking, I think that women should probably defer to men. That's my basic syllogism.
I'd say to each their own on that stance. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Wait, what does that mean, though? To each their own?
To each their own. If you do feel that way, then in your own stance and in your own way of logically thinking, then so be it. If we're gonna talk about this in the sense of like relationships and stuff like that, someone who probably feels the same way as you is going to compliment that, and that way will create that ultimate balance in your way, right?
Well, I mean, there are people that want to be furries, and they will find someone who wants to do that with them. But do you object to his, I think Andrew's getting to kind of, at least to some degree, this concept of women being submissive to men. Do you object to this in a relationship dynamic context?
I would say, like, it definitely is a trope that is quite common.
What do you mean a trope?
Like, it's a relationship type that men are more dominant than women. It's very common. I understand that. But there's also, like, relationship types that I feel like the woman wears the pants, to some extent. There are some stay-at-home dads, for instance, and the mom would be the provider.
Well, we can go ahead and grant that there's all kinds of relationship dynamics. There are women who are more dominant. There are women who want to date soy boys and peg them. I'm not really interested in that, though. What I am interested in is kind of more painting with a bit more of a broad brush and seeing what works best, generally speaking, when it comes to relationships. What do men generally want? What do women generally want? Because we can make all these carve-outs about, well, I have a friend who knows a brother who knows a guy, and she pegs him. Okay, cool. But I think what Andrew's talking about is he's taking a position. He's not just saying, well, whatever floats your boat. He's saying, I think, Andrew, you can correct me, the best relationships, they work out best if the woman is submissive to the man. Is that correct, Andrew?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
I'm saying that it would be generally what I would consider to be optimal. I think that the deference to the man is generally going to make most relationships more optimal. Yes.
I mean, I agree
and
that
go ahead.
Sorry. I agree that it's generally true, but like she mentioned, there still are exceptions. Like I would consider myself, like I want to be a provider, for example.
Stop the cap.
You want to be a provider?
I do, yeah.
For a man?
Yes.
Who should...
Can you provide for dinner for the whatever podcast tonight?
That would be a good way to make up for the tardiness.
Yeah. Then you can be a provider.
I mean, I want to be a provider for my guy.
Oh, okay. Well...
Well, so Brian, I guess you have to be a provider for all the women tonight.
Yeah, we are going to do a pizza intermission, but so you want to be a provider for your guy, so like you'll pay on the first date?
Yeah, or we can split it. But I am in college right now, so of course I'm still working myself up, but I'm saying in the future I want to be a lawyer. And, you know, I want to make a career for myself. I don't ever see myself as being like a stay-at-home mom or like a housewife. And there's nothing wrong with whoever wants to do that. But that's why I'm saying it varies from a person to person.
And so you want... so in every instance, when you've been on a date with a guy, perhaps for dinner or some activity, you always because men will have a tendency to go ahead and just pay the whole thing. You'll make the offer and insist on going half?
I'll make an offer, yes. I'm not going to insist if they really want to do that. I mean, like I said, it's if they want to do that gesture, why would I reject it? But I would be willing to do that gesture as well.
How many first dates have you been on?
For like, I don't know, maybe like actual dates, first dates, maybe 7, 8, I don't know.
Did you pay the whole bill on any of them?
Yeah, in 2 of those.
2 of them, and then the rest were split?
That was like, I don't know the exact number, but I think like majority was split.
Okay. All right. Well, you want to be a provider? Do you want to be a provider?
I think I tend to be someone who pursues the guy.
Oh yeah.
But I understand that some men really do love the chase and want to have that sort of provider mindset. And so to go back on like Andrew's stance, if a man being dominant is like the most optimal relationship and a woman being a little bit being submissive, I'd say in some ways, yes. Women, like, if they know deep down that they could provide, they could do all sorts of things, they're like a triple decker, give men a chance, you know, for them to like open the door for you or pay the bill. Let them do what makes them feel good.
Wait, you said you chase men? Or what did you say exactly? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I'm a pursuer, yes. I do chase.
You're the pursuer?
Yes. I'm the one that usually either initiates, but there were men in the past that have...
you initiate?
Have initiated. And I just was receptive.
What about, how does that look?
Let me see here. Okay, so... And I definitely learned from like my past relationships where I'm like, okay, maybe this is not the way to go, right? Man shows interest. Me thriving in that sort of attention is trying to pretty much commit or see and feel out how the relationship's going to go. If you open all of your gates, you know, being super open, pretty much being the provider, giving the guy everything that he wants, I feel like slowly over time he's going to question like, okay, what can I even do for you? Like,
wait, hold on. So you said, I asked you how you chase, and the first words out of your mouth were, the guy takes initiative.
Yeah, I would say, like, for some of the situations I've had, but the one time that I actually did pursue, or the several times.
The one time you pursued?
A couple times.
Okay.
So a couple times I pursued, I was like, okay, like, I obviously show interest, and it'll take a couple of times for, like, the guy to, like, pick it up, because some men are oblivious.
Hold on, I need details here. So you say
yes.
You show interest, but the men are oblivious. They're not picking it up.
Yeah.
So what are these signs that you're giving?
Like, I'm obviously chatting him up. I'm asking like, "Oh, what are you doing like after this?" I'm just like obviously like staring at them, smiling, just being actively engaged, making like side flirting comments here and there. With my ex from like high school, like I did chat him up, and I was like, you know what? If I really want to, then I could get it. So we just started talking, and I never knew like that he had feelings. So I took the initiative to like ask him out, or like pretty much make it official. So that was my sense of pursuit.
Wait, that was the one time you pursued?
That was like with my committed, and then I tried to like flirt with this one guy, but he was oblivious to it. But then I realized I was like, I don't know, maybe not this guy. So I stopped pursuing.
I'm just a bit confused because you say you chase, but then, I mean, maybe these guys are just totally clueless. You say you're making multiple moves and they're not getting a hint, but it's like, I don't know. It's like you look at a guy, and is that you pursuing him?
No, obviously, like you want to like get to know the person, so you're gonna be like talking to them constantly, and trying to get their attention from time to time. So yeah.
How many first dates would you say you've been on?
First dates, let me see. I'd say like 7.
7, okay. And then in all 7 of these cases, did you make first contact with the guy?
I would say at least like 2 to 3 of them I have.
So
some of the
minority.
guys are not as confrontational to like make the move, and so I would make the move and I would pursue it.
But only for 2 or 3 of the guys, you made the first step of initiative.
That's when they become like the committed relationships that I've had in the past. Except for that one dude that was like, okay, I'm not feeling it.
Wait, so a minority, you said you like to chase, but a minority of the men you've been on dates with, okay. So you approach them, how are you meeting them? In person?
So, Duffy was in high school, so 2 of them were in high school. I would just see them in class every day, just like sit next to them, chat it up, you know? That's how I would pretty much like get a feel and decide whether I want to like, you know, be with that person.
Have you ever approached a guy?
A guy?
Yeah.
Like, give me a situation.
They're not in your social circle. They don't go to school with you, or maybe they go to school with you, but you don't have a class with them or whatever. You saw him in school, thought he was good looking. Did you ever walk up to him and introduce yourself?
I did, yeah. But this was like, I had never met him, but like beforehand. It was just like during like a college involvement fair. Thought the guy was kind of cute, and I wanted him to join my club. So me and my friend, like we went up to him, but I was like, yeah, like what's your name? And then we just chatted up. But like it was very brief because he was busy. So.
Of the 7 first dates that you went on, how often did you ask for the phone number or the contact info?
Oh, that's a good question.
None of them?
No, I would say, let me think. 'Cause it's been a long time. Like, I'm not gonna know this on the top of my head, you know?
It's been a long time since what?
Like asking for numbers for a guy. Usually because like for me, and I think like this is how I would approach like friendships too, is like I don't think about like wanting to like be with a guy right away, you know? If he's cute, he's cute. But I usually want to be friends first with the person, and if anything like ever sparks, then like of course I would take things a little bit further.
But here's the thing. Sorry about that.
Oh.
I don't know what happened. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. And then phone number wise, I would say like a couple of times. I can't really give you like a definitive number, just because it's been a while. So it's like a passive thing that I don't like actively remember. Like,
okay.
I asked his number.
Did you plan and set up the first dates?
Ooh.
These can be yes or no answers, by the way, just letting you know.
I would say there were times where I would have to initiate like, hey, like let's go on a date or something.
No. First date.
First date.
Not a guy you've been dating for 3 months.
Yeah, first dates.
First date.
Yes.
You planned the first date?
Yes.
Did you pay for the first date? In any instance?
No, it was split.
Split, okay. You ever go for the first kiss?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just girls will say they like to chase, but then you question them a little bit and they'll say, well, I looked at a guy once and I winked at him. Did you go up to him? No. It's like, okay, bro, you don't chase. But okay. All right. Let's see here. Hey,